Started. Good evening, everybody. This is Alderwoman Nicole Lee. Let me turn my video on of the 11th Ward, and welcome to our first community zoning meeting in a while. We're here tonight to consider a zoning change request for 3402 South Aberdeen. The party is represented here by Mr. Pekarsky, who's their attorney. If we could just go around, I think that I heard earlier, Sandy, you are a neighbor. Corey, I think you are a neighbor as well.
Yeah,
Jeff?
correct.
Jeff, are you a neighbor as well? That's okay. You don't have to identify yourself. I like to kind of understand what everybody's where everybody's from. Matt, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, Matt Malik. I'm a neighbor, not in the immediate vicinity, but in the neighborhood.
Matt joins us for a lot of zoning calls because he's very interested in zoning all across the ward. You've got me here, Alderman Lee, Carlos Diaz, my chief of staff, is also on the call. If you haven't joined us for one of these before, generally what happens here is that we allow for the requesting party, generally through their attorney, to give a brief presentation, just an overview of the request that's being made. Then we open it up to questions from anybody who's on the call. We go from there. So, Mr. Pekarsky, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you. For everybody's information, I'm Tom Pekarsky with the law firm of Gordon and Pekarsky, and I represent the property owner at 3402 South Aberdeen Street, who is David Moore. The property is a 24 by 124 foot lot in the middle of the block. It was purchased by Mr. Moore several years ago as a 4-unit residential building, and he's operated it as a 4-unit residential building, and with the understanding that it was 4 units throughout its history. He would now like to sell the building, and unfortunately the city has only certified it as 2 units, when in the past they've certified it in previous sales for much more than that. So we are looking with this zoning amendment to correct the city's what we believe is an incorrect certification is only 2 units. We want them to certify the full 4 units that are currently there. We are not seeking to expand the building or alter the building. This is simply to certify an existing condition. That will require a zoning amendment from the current RS3 to that of an RT 4.5. At which point we will submit plans to the building department to certify the number of units and have this legalized if the full 4 units legalized if the zoning amendment is granted. The entire block is zoned R3. However, many of the buildings are multi-unit buildings, including the one directly adjacent to us at 3400. So much of the block is non-conforming in terms of zoning. Several of the buildings on the block are also nearly identical in architecture to the subject building, and they're multi-family buildings as well. So it appears that historically that these buildings were meant to be multi-unit buildings from their inception. So with that, we'd ask for the neighbors and aldermen's indulgence in allowing Mr. Moore to amend the zoning from the current RS3 to RT4 to restore the historic and continued use of this site as 4 residential dwelling units.
Thanks, Mr. Pekarsky. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to share my screen. I have a picture of the property just so that, you know, if you don't live on the block, you can at least see what it looks like. Can you guys see this is the property right here?
yeah.
Okay, great. Because I can't tell when I'm actually sharing.
Yeah. Now, does this zoning apply to all the block, as you know, or you may not know, but the Aberdeen block begins on 32nd and ends on 34th. So does this zoning apply to all of these 3 blocks?
No,
This
oh.
zoning change is only being requested for this one property.
Okay.
I have a question. You said that essentially that it had been a few years and that there had been a mistake. When this property was purchased in 2004 by Mr. Moore, wouldn't you have had to get a zoning when he bought the property? There would have been a zoning cert that was issued by the city of Chicago. What did that zoning cert say when he purchased the property in 2004?
It was
In other words,
it was my understanding that he purchased it as a 4-unit building. I don't have the zoning cert in front of me.
but I mean, the zoning cert would actually show exactly what the city certified, not what it was operated as, because that's the whole point of the zoning cert, to show what it is legally what it is legal to operate it as, whether it be a 2-unit or 4-unit or frankly a single family house. So it would make, I mean, wouldn't it make sense to actually get a copy of that zoning cert from 2004? Because if it showed it was a 4-unit in 2004 when he purchased it, it's my understanding that the city will go ahead and actually upgrade it, for lack of a better term, based upon what it was purchased as.
Well,
so I mean, I'm curious why that wasn't gathered from the city.
we had discussed this with the city, and they had said that any records in the past over 2 units, they were not going to validate. That they were now considering it a 2-unit building, and we're not going to change their opinion on this.
I think it's curious that we don't have the zoning cert from 2004 when that would seem to be the dispositive on the matter.
Well, we're here. It's been operated as a 4-unit building for quite a while. We are not looking to expand. We're not looking to alter the building. We are seeking to do this for 4 units.
And I certainly understand that, but at the same time, the question is not, I mean, as we know, in the city of Chicago, there are a lot of illegal basement units where people operate them all the time. And the fact that they're operated as an illegal, with an illegal basement unit doesn't mean that the city of Chicago recognizes as such. So that's why I'm asking about what it was when he purchased the building. The fact that he's been operating it, it's not dispositive to say, well, there were 4 units, it's okay. No, it's not okay. It's what the zoning actually said at the time. And you're not actually telling us what the zoning said at the time. You're just saying, for 19 years, he's been treating it as a 4-unit, irrespective of what the city zoned it as in 2004 and before that.
Well, I could go back to water records that
Water records aren't zoning records, though, are they?
Oh, well, they're illustrative. They're illustrative.
Well, they're not zoning records. Though.
Oh, no.
I mean, the water department doesn't zone property, does it?
The zoning department certainly uses that in their own internally in their own assessments. So yes, they are used as evidence, and on buildings where they don't have an exact history, it's a matter of accumulating evidence, and water records are used as one form of evidence.
Did you try to get the zoning record from 2004 when he purchased the property?
I don't have that. I don't have that available in my file right now. I'm looking for it. But that being said, this is the number of units that has been historical use of this property, and we're looking to legalize that number.
Mr. Pekarsky, does Mr. Moore have signed leases for all 4 units or historical information about how long since he purchased the building? What did you say, 20 years ago?
Around that.
Okay, like 19, because it was 2004.
It was 2004, according to the Cook County Assessor. Excuse me, the Cook County Recorder's Office. I apologize.
Because I know that leases are another piece. No, I haven't requested from him or sought a record of his leases over the years.
Understood.
I have a question here.
Please go ahead, Sandy.
I'm just curious because I don't know, in light of what's being said, I'm just kind of curious as to, okay, so let's say that, the zoning was not correct or it doesn't match, maybe set 2, so that's in the past, like, what would happen? Like, is there a fine or do we just move on? Or I'm just trying to figure out, okay, does it put it on hold for him or how does it impact David Moore?
Yeah, zoning is currently only certifying as a 2-unit building. So if nothing should happen, it would only be able to be operated as a 2-unit building, legally operated as a 2-unit building.
Right, but the zoning that was originally there, I think somebody on the call was mentioning that it was specified there. And I'm just trying to see, like, if we go back, in history from the time he bought it till now, like, is there any impact to what he's trying to do now?
I think that, and I'll take a shot at this. I'm not a zoning attorney or a zoning expert here. But to your point, Sandy, I think what you're asking is, if it's been operating as a 4-unit and the zoning change is granted, like, what happens? I believe that this just makes it conforming to how it's been operating. So the zoning would match how the building is currently being utilized, which is as a 4-unit building. Does that sound right to everybody on the call here?
Yes.
That makes sense. I was just wondering, like, okay, so if it's been operated for a long time like that, like, is there a penalty or is somebody going to force him to take 2 people out of their units, or what are the ramifications of having been operated as 4 when it was legally 2, maybe? Because we don't know what the zoning is on the, when he purchased the building, but more than likely it was 2, right?
Well, it was definitely not. He has never operated as a 2-unit building.
I think the question was what the zoning was.
I don't know what they don't have a trace of zoning over the years, but I can only imagine that the zoning was in the history of this block was allowed for much more densely populated buildings because of the older, several of the older buildings, including the one directly adjacent to us, are multi-unit buildings.
Yeah, they are. I don't have a problem with it being zoned properly and having him operated as 4 units. It's fairly common on this block. I myself have 3 units and 1 house in the back on our property, so I have to check my zoning now. I'm worried.
Well, in terms of zoning, if you have they do, if you have a certification for a certain number of units, despite that zoning, the underlying zoning, you would be grandfathered in.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you guys do these type of meetings. This is really adding a layer of transparency that we didn't have before. So thank you so much for doing that.
You're welcome. And I think, Sandy, this just kind of, I think, is illustrative of a lot of buildings not just in the 11th ward, but across the city, because the city doesn't have, it isn't really so great at knowing what it has also. So when zoning changes at different times, predecessors of mine have downzoned different places. So just, I'll give you an example on Halsted, just south of 35th Street, there's a series of commercial buildings that are zoned RS3, single family residential up to 3 stories. And clearly those buildings are not, and those were done, they were downzoned for particular reasons by my predecessors, I think, just to control a little bit more what was going into that business district. But it could be that, you've owned a property for a generation and the zoning has changed around you multiple times, but because you were always there and nothing has changed, it's just sort of what's classified as a nonconformity. Matt, go ahead. You've got a question or a comment, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I guess both, which is one just to say, because I think this has kind of come up in some of the previous meetings, which is to say that it's likely that when the property was bought, it might have been conforming at the time. And I think what would be probably helpful to kind of get to the core of Corey's questions is, did the city change the zoning on the property without notifying the owner? Because Sandy, for example, if you live on this direct block and you have a multi-unit, chances are any of those units are now non-conforming. There's only about 2 parcels on this block that are zoned for anything other than single family. So worth looking into for your own property. But I think just to Corey's questions, and hope I'm not mischaracterizing it, I think it would just be helpful to know if that was the case here. Was it conforming? Was it compliant when he bought it? And then at some point in the last 20 years, did it get changed? And I think also just my question is, I know that this property has been on and off the market a couple times, and it's contingent. Currently, is the property not able to be sold currently to the party that's under contract with because of this zoning? Is this preventing the sale?
Yes, because it's not the number of units that it was being listed as
Doesn't conform to the current zoning.
correct at the time after contracting the closing attorneys, who I am not the closing attorney on this, requests a zoning cert, and the city comes back with its number, and it came back with 2 on this property.
Yeah. And if I could just, I guess maybe sort of, summarize, and actually I think Matt did a very nice job of trying to kind of get at what my point is. I think that the city does have records that go back a long way. And the fact is 19 years old for the city of Chicago is not really that old. So I think it makes sense to see what the zoning search said when Mr. Moore purchased this building in 2004. He shouldn't get the benefit. I mean, if it was zoned as a 2-unit, again, if it was zoned as a 4-unit, he absolutely should. I have no problem with him getting a 4-unit. However, if he purchased it as a 2-unit and operated it illegally as a 4-unit for 19 years, and now is trying to sell it as a 4-unit, essentially to reap a windfall profit after operating it illegally for 19 years, I think there's a problem with that. And again, the city should actually have the record. And again, I'll tell you, I live on this street. This street is a very narrow street that has extreme problems with parking, especially in the wintertime when it snows. There are 2 parking spaces, and obviously with 4 units, most people having a cars in this neighborhood, there is an absolute problem. And again, it's not about punishing somebody if the city did something with, unbeknownst to them, but I don't think it's appropriate to give somebody the benefit of upgrading their zoning when they've been operating it illegally for 19 years. And frankly, this is something which, it's knowable. It's a matter of going to the city zoning department and finding out how it was zoned when Mr. Moore purchased the property. That's it.
I have water records dating back to 1952, which show 3 units.
Okay, but that's not the zoning records, and the question is how he.
Well, no. I think you have a misunderstanding of what the city uses in making determinations. And water records.
Sir, did you actually ask the zoning department for their records from 2004?
I did not.
Okay, because that seems like that would actually be dispositive of the issue. And I'm guessing the reason why you didn't is because you were afraid of what you might find out.
No,
And that's just-
that's a strong assumption and a borderline accusation. I'm not the zoning attorney on this, so it wouldn't be something that I would have pursued. This is a route that from a zoning perspective is would be the most logical route to seek a zoning amendment for it to be certified.
So we're right up against the time here. We've got another call starting at 6 o'clock. I've made a request to the zoning administrator to look into the zoning history of this building. When I get the information, I'll take a look at it. I believe that this building has not, Mr. Pekarsky, just for clarity, you're saying that when Mr. Moore purchased it, he purchased it as a 4-unit building and has not made any physical changes to the building in terms of like making more units out of what was there to begin with.
That is my information. That's what that is my information. I will also ask for further information from Mr. Moore and his closing attorney.
Corey, I thank you for joining the call and for raising these issues. I understand the challenge with parking. I don't want to necessarily, if there have been 4 units operating there and we have the backup for it from the zoning records from previously, I'm more inclined to not reduce the number of units that we have on the street. That being said, I think I've got a little bit more research to do here before I make a decision on this, but I appreciate you raising the issues. And Sandy, thank you for joining us as well. Jeff, did you have any questions? I just want to make sure everybody had an opportunity to be heard.
No questions.
Okay, great. So we'll do some follow-up on this and we'll make sure we share an update on my newsletter. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.